Good morning, everyone. Mayor Chris Jensen here with another edition of Mental Health Monday on this beautiful, beautiful May morning. Although, Kristen, it feels like a July morning out there. We're coming to you live from Noblesville, Indiana. Hopefully, I know we have folks from all over the United States that tune in. So I hope it's a beautiful day wherever you are. And we're just so glad that you're here. You may or may not know that May is Mental Health Month. So these conversations this morning are all the more important. But again, we're not going to wait just for the month of May to honor and recognize mental health. We've been doing that for the last over a year and a half. And so I am joined once again by my good friend, a true public servant in her own right, owners of Pathways to Healing Counseling here in Noblesville, Kristen Boyce.
Good morning, Mayor Jensen.
Kristen.
I'm so excited to be here with you today and everybody joining us.
Yes, always glad to have you. Thanks again for donating your time here this morning to have this conversation. We have some pretty great topics to go over, some pretty meaty topics. So we may not get to everything today, but that's okay because we'll be back in 2 weeks and have this conversation again. But we're going to talk a lot about transitioning back to normal. I know this weekend I was out at several events that just definitely have a more normal feel about them. I was at the inaugural Peony Festival here in the city of Noblesville, which is awesome and very well attended. But I can imagine those folks that have been more sheltered in place for the last year and a half, going to a Peony Festival with hundreds and hundreds of people is a little anxiety ridden, right, Kristen? So that's kind of why we're gonna talk about some of these topics here today. But before we get any further, we should start with a very important exercise, one that I do daily, some square breathing. I'll let Kristen lead us in that conversation. Kristen, take it away.
Yes. So as we deal with anxiety and we feel more anxious, maybe about interacting socially, we feel more anxious about not wearing masks and being out in public, I invite everybody to take deep breaths, 3 to 5 breaths every hour, every day. And that seems like a lot. And it will help regulate your nervous system. So as we talk about how your body feels when you get anxious, I want you to notice where you feel it in your body as we have this conversation today. And then you're going to practice the deep breathing, the square breathing as you need it. So let's practice it together. Feet on the floor, and you're going to press into your feet. And the reason why this is important is because it centers and grounds you in the present moment. So you're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're right here and now, and you're really anchoring into the nervous system. So feet on the floor, we're going to inhale through your nose for 4. We're going to hold for 4 and exhale slowly out your mouth, like for the kids, they say cooling a cookie or breathing through a straw. And we want that exhale to be as long as possible to get the full benefit of the breath. So let's do one together. Inhale, hold, exhale slowly out your mouth. My dog was exhaling right as we were doing that because dogs are notorious. They show us how to do this. If you have a dog or a cat, they will do this deep breathing just on their own as they feel that in their body. So let's do one more together. Inhale, hold, exhale. You may feel kind of shortness of breath at first because your body's not used to it. Keep going. Keep doing a couple more breaths and then check in with your nervous system and see, okay, I feel that in my shoulders. Let all that drop out of your shoulders on that exhale. Release any of this tension or tightness or that negative thinking you might have that you're not good enough, you're defective, something's wrong with you. Inhale that relaxation. Exhale what doesn't serve you.
That's great. Like I said, I do square breathing all the time. It's something that I practice on a daily basis. It's instrumental for me. I work with my kids to try to do it. I can tell you that's sometimes a failure, but oftentimes a success as well. And we're trying, and that's the key thing at home. We're talking about breathing and regulating our emotions, which is incredibly important. So, hey, if you're listening this morning, make sure you feel free to say hi in the chat. If you have any questions in the chat, feel free to put those out there. We can talk about transitions. You can share your thoughts with, going back to normal. You may have some concerns. Lob them out there. We want to hear from you. So let us know that you're watching here this morning. We really appreciate you all taking time to do this with us. So we're going to hop into the topic of returning to normal. And we hear that a lot all around our city, all around our state. We saw last week the federal government removed some parameters around mask wearing. You're starting to see here locally events come back up. I know I was at 3 different events on Saturday, Kristen, which was 3 more than I normally have on weekends. Official city business, and it was great to see people. But I know a lot of people have some anxiety around that. And that looks very different for everybody. So some people are vaccinated, others have chosen not to be vaccinated. Some people want to wear a mask, others do not want to wear a mask. There's all across the board. There's opinions on everything, and I respect those opinions. But there's a lot of emotions around it too. So, Kristen, if we could, can we dive in a little bit on how we should approach maybe some anxiety that we have around returning to normal?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that when we think about, and I could do quote unquote normal because it won't feel the same as it did. A lot of times there'll be parts of you that will feel the same, and then it will feel different. I know a lot of people I'm working with have what they've never experienced social anxiety, and now they have it. They're like, I don't even know how to have a conversation. It's awkward when I'm face to face with someone. I don't even know what to say. Like they're having to relearn how to really have conversations, how to connect. And that shame saying, do they think something's wrong with me? Do they think I'm not good enough? I've changed a lot over the past year and a half. I've been through a lot over the last year and a half. You might have experienced a lot of grief and loss. And we have to talk about transitions, and the reality of transitions has a lot of emotions that go with it. So we have grief, we have loss, we have sadness, we have fear, we might even have some anger and disgust. It's okay. You're going to have a lot of feelings come up as you reemerge into, and I kind of put normal in quotes because what is normal now? But the thought of going out in public and not wear, some people not wearing a mask. I was with my daughter and we were running because she needed khaki pants because she volunteers at Conner Prairie. Or khaki shorts. Couldn't find the khaki shorts. We went into several locations and she had fear. And our kids are having fear. And I want to acknowledge this, that she's like, they're not wearing their masks because they've worn their masks all year long in school. It makes sense that they may have some fear too. And for you to acknowledge that. So I simply said, tell me about what you're feeling. She said, I'm afraid. I said, okay, it's okay to have your feelings. Do you, take some deep breaths? And she said, okay, I kind of want to go. And I said, that's okay. It's okay for them to speak up about what they're really feeling. And then we processed it in the car. She said, it just feels so different, Mom. We've worn these masks all this whole time and now we're not. And I'm afraid I'm going to get sick. And so it's okay for them to have their fears. And it's so important you're acknowledging it. You're not bypassing it. You're not dismissive. When we're dismissive of someone else's feelings and we kind of go, oh, there's nothing to worry about. You're fine. I mean, we don't know if these people are vaccinated or not. You're trying to make them feel better. It doesn't help them. What helps them is acknowledge that they might feel afraid. Say that makes sense. And then you're going to create some space for them to process that and hold that. Then you can talk about maybe some of the safety and what's safe and what's not safe and go into that after you've held this space to acknowledge and process and not dismiss what they feel. Because if we dismiss what people feel, yes, you got a hand up.
No, you can keep going. I just I'm going to comment on the mask thing in a minute.
So it's important for us to recognize you might not feel that way, and that's okay. Someone else might feel differently, and that's okay. If we can recognize that we might have different opinions, different experiences, and be acknowledging of that, of your own feelings, because we get into comparison and we're like, well, they seem fine. What's wrong with me? No, nothing's wrong with you. We've been in a pandemic and still are for a year and a half, which creates a lot of fear. Honestly, there's a lot of fear out there and there's nothing wrong with you. Taking your deep breath, hand on your heart center and go, it's okay. It makes sense. You might feel a little afraid, and then acknowledge your own feelings and offer yourself empathy so you can offer it to others. Question. I love this.
Yeah, no, I was going to actually comment. I just, I'm not sure if anybody else has this experience. So chime in if you have, but I just stopped this morning at Kroger because my beautiful daughter, who's turning 6 on Wednesday, needs a cake tonight, and she wanted a teal cake with purple polka dots. and I had about 7 hours to figure out how to get that teal cake with purple polka dots. My friends at Kroger nailed it for me. They had a teal cake, which is crazy. Anyways, that's not the point of the conversation. But I walked in maskless. I chose to be vaccinated, so I was vaccinated. Kroger changed their policy. Those who've been vaccinated could not wear a mask. Ran into a friend of mine who had a mask on, and it was this. Neither one of us said anything, but I felt like, oh crap, I don't have a mask on. Is that wrong? Is that, so I'm like looking back to make sure that I read the sign right. And then, what does that person think of me? Cause I don't have a mask on, but they have a mask on. Why do they have a mask on? It was very hubbub of emotions for me, just trying to get that teal cake with purple polka dots on it. So I just thought I would chime in on that, because it's definitely caused a different feeling as you go in places.
Exactly, because we're in another transition now. We were all wearing masks, and that was the rule. That was the boundary. And now the boundaries changed, that if you're vaccinated, masks are optional, right? You can, or it's up to you. So now we're like, how do we reacclimate to this? And, judgment, right? When we're in fear, we judge. Oftentimes, because we are scared. We want to feel safe. We all want to feel safe at the end of the day. We are all tired of feeling afraid, and we're tired of now this whole awkwardness about it, because we don't know how to feel sometimes. We don't know, what we feel, because it keeps changing. Now we're in this season where it's changing. And again, when we know that transitions bring emotion, it's important. The other thing I think is really important to acknowledge is people are exhausted. They didn't know they were so exhausted. And as we transition, you almost go, I am so tired, because we've been in this survival state for so long. We didn't realize we were in maybe a survival state. And now we're coming out of that survival state, and we're tired. We're like, why am I so tired? I'm hearing this a lot. Like, I feel so tired. Yeah, because your body's now trying to transition out of what was this sort of cocoon, even though it was still, we had a lot of fear around it. Now we're acclimating to more interaction with people than we might have had before. And it can stir up a lot of emotions. So I want to acknowledge you. Yes, that's a whole nother set of emotions that we didn't even know were there until we're in the moment. You might not even know that that would feel like until you're in the moment.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. I think, like a lot of things, Kristen, the fear of the unknown is so prevalent. And I realized, when I've gone into Kroger, or if I've gone to the Peony Festival, that you're like, oh, a little unsure how this is going to go and what I should do. But once you kind of get into that, it's kind of like the anxiety living in the body. Move and allow it to process. Go, if you feel comfortable, go try it out. And once you get there and you're there, you tend to relax a little bit. You tend to feel a little bit more comforted there. So I'm assuming that's a natural reaction.
Some people might feel more comforted, and some people be like, you know what, this is too much. I need to go. And that's okay too. It's knowing yourself. This is the key to mental health. It's knowing your triggers and what's underneath that trigger. Where is that coming from? What's going on? What are you feeling emotionally? Where is that in your body? I know it feels like a lot. And when you really start practicing this, you feel empowered. You feel empowered to make choices that will serve you. We're so trying to go along with what everybody else thinks is okay, and we abandon ourselves. So what may be good for one person might not be so good for another. And no good or bad, it may not feel like that's the spot for you. That's okay too. So you may be surprised that you're like, oh, I feel really, now that I've kind of breathed through this fear, I'm really enjoying this. Oh, look at the flowers. And oh, I got to see people I haven't seen in a while. And there may be some more connection that happens because we've been in isolation. So it can be both. We can be kind of excited to see people and scared. We can be nervous and excited. There's different parts of us that feel differently at different times, and it's okay. That's normal. So when we don't want to shame ourselves or feel like there's something wrong with us, because we look around and be like, well, they seem okay. What's wrong with me? I'm like, it's okay. Everybody has their own experience, their own feelings, their own traumas that may be underneath what's going on. And when we can have compassion and empathy for that, we cannot feel threatened, and we can move away from judgment. So I'm so glad you're sharing this because I think it's really real life. We're humans with
Yeah.
feelings.
Well, I can tell you one of the things I'm most anxious about. So I just naturally am a hugger by trade. Obviously, my hugs have been greatly reduced over the past year and a half for obvious reasons. And don't worry, I'm not going to come at you and like hug you now. But it's the whole awkward. Am I going to fist bump you? Are we doing elbows? Are we doing like the butt out side hug thing? That's causing me more internal turmoil than most things. So if I approach you and you're on the street, just like self-identify right away what you want me to do, because I will stand there very awkwardly until we work through that.
I think that is so true because some people are like, and then some people just go in for the handshake, and then the other
Yeah.
person's like, oh, I don't want to shake your hand. That's scary.
Right.
And then what I tell people to do is ask permission. Are you okay with the hug? Or would you be okay with a hug? And if they go, yeah, I'm not, it's okay for you to say no. And it's okay for you to say yes, whatever that looks like for you. Because it can create this awkwardness because we don't know. We're not really handshaking anymore. We're not really hugging, but now we're starting to hug again because if you're vaccinated, I'm vaccinated, we kind of feel more safe. So it's this gray area, right? I think you're spot on. It's this gray.
And then if we shake hands and I'm not comfortable with it, and I immediately go and put hand sanitizer on in front of you, then I'm really judging you up front because I just put hand sanitizer on mid conversation. So that's a whole nother layer of conversation we got to work through.
Because we're afraid that we're going to hurt the other person's feelings, or the other person's going to be offended, or the other person's now going to go down a shame story. So a shame story says, oh man, shouldn't have done that. Oh, I shouldn't have shaken their hand. Oh, they're probably really worried right now. We start projecting on what we think the other person feels. And I call them shame stories. And we can kind of go down a shame spiral. And that's happening a lot right now. And I think because you nailed it with uncertainty and the unknown, we tend to write stories to try to gain certainty. The brain loves certainty. The brain loves to know. And when we don't know, we want to fill in the blanks. So I see this all the time with couples in particular. They will say, well, I know you, ba, 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 ba. And the other person's like, I go, and the other person doesn't check it. Like, is that true for you? I know tends to bring up a lot of defenses. And so we've already written a story and we don't even know if it's true, but we really believe it's true because our brain wants certainty. Our brain loves that. It makes us feel safe. It makes us feel secure. It makes us feel calmer, I should say, if we feel like we know what's coming next. If we know the outcome, and here's the reality, if the pandemic showed us nothing else, we don't have any certainty. I don't know what's going to happen 1 minute from now. That's why the breathing, faith, whatever that looks like for you, can help anchor you through that uncertainty, through that fear that arises. Because when we start making up stories, we create disconnection and we create more isolation because we really don't feel seen then. And then we really function from that story. So if I feel like, ooh, they're going to think I don't care about them if I don't give them a hug, I'm kind of starting to make choices based on what other people think rather than what works for me. So it's really important we check those shame stories when they come up, and they will come up. We all have them. So that's the beauty of doing this work. You start recognizing when those come up, and you take your deep breaths, you nurture yourself through it, and then you feel calmer on the inside.
Love that. Let's transition a little bit here, and in the last part of our conversation, kind of talking about kids. So most of us have kids, or I know there's a lot of grandparents that tune in, which is awesome. You're dealing with your kids and your grandkids, and obviously they're going through a lot of transitions. Every kid's different. I have 4 at home. My oldest is a 10-year-old boy in 4th grade. Super nervous Nelly, very much anxious, worries more about the other kids more than I do. So trying to work with him, and he's, like I said, a little bit more anxious about some of this stuff. So how do we help our kids? They're getting ready to transition out of school, most likely, depending on where you go, for the summer months. Pools are going to open up. just different activities that look differently for them. There's a lot of questions of what next year school year looks like. I have no answers to that, by the way. But there's a lot of uncertainty around that. So how do we work with our kids, our grandkids, our neighborhoods, our nieces, our nephews, whoever it may be that you interact? How are we helping our kids process this?
First, you got to check your own anxiety. If you're highly anxious, you will not be able to help your child work through their anxiety. It's like two anxious people, and you're not going to be able to self-soothe and self-regulate, and so they're not going to either. So the first thing I always say is check your own anxiety. Are you feeling anxious about something? Are you feeling afraid about something? Journal about it, tend to it, talk to someone about it, breathe through it, whatever that looks like for you. And then we have the emotional bandwidth and capacity to tolerate our children's fears, because it's normal. Anytime there's a transition, there will be some fear. And when we can acknowledge that, and we can hold space for that, and we can attune to them without projecting our own fears into it, that helps them the very, very most. So when they say, I'm really scared about next year, if they're making a transition from maybe elementary school going to middle school, or middle school to high school, or high school to college, or just a grade transition, you can say, yeah, that makes sense. Tell me more about it. What's that like for you? Well, I'm afraid my friends won't be in my class, or whatever they're going to say. And you go, yeah, so you're afraid you won't stay connected to your friends, or you're afraid you'll lose touch with your friends, or you won't be part of the friend group. Let them tell you. And if you normally don't do this in your family, it will take time for your kids to open up to you. And then once they do, not trying to fix, rescue, or save them out of it is a key. You're going to acknowledge it. And you'll notice the more you acknowledge and empathize, then they'll move on. But the more we try to bypass it, fix it, talk them out of it, positive them out of it, the more they're going to stay stuck in it. It's fascinating to watch. When you learn this, when you can mirror back what you heard them say and acknowledge it and just listen, there is power in that and their own anxiety. And then we're doing the breathing at home. So they're learning that, which is a huge thing. And also with kids with anxiety, a lot of times they need to know that they're safe. They need to know that they're safe and they're loved. So I tell my kids, and they're like, I know, Mom, if you tell me this one more time, I'm like, you're loved, you matter, and you're enough. You don't have to perform, please me, perfect, pretend. You don't. That's not where your worth comes from. And we train our kids to perform, get A grades, do great on the sports team. And then we acknowledge them a ton. And then when they don't do that, they feel like they're not good enough. They feel like they're not smart. They feel dumb. They feel like they're no good at the sport. And we're setting them up to feel like if you're not good at something, then you have no worth and value. And it's a sham. And when I can tell kids that you're enough just the way you are, and consistently you're modeling that helps them have a felt sense of security within. It is the most powerful thing you can offer your kids.
Well, and I think that's, I will, in the interest of self-disclosure, I think one of the hardest things I struggle with is I'm a fixer. I want instant gratification. I want to help fix my kids. If it's something where my wife's upset about something, instantly trying. And I think Julie Jensen would admit too that she is an instant fixer as well when it comes to our kids. So giving them the space to process is not something I do well. And something that I'm going to continue to work on is to let them breathe. Because to your point, kids are resilient if you give them the time to express that resiliency and work through that. But again, if we jump on top of it, we've simply suppressed it and probably pushed it down the road a little bit. So that's
that in their life. Then that pattern becomes a pattern in their relationships and a pattern in their life.
Yeah,
so it's a beautiful gift you can give them of emotional availability.
Yes, good. All right, before we turn to our last topic here, the two people, Patricia Bratton, good morning, and then Sasta Santos from Brazil. I'm maybe Brazil, the company or the country, or it could be Brazil, Indiana. Regardless, good morning, and thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. So, last topic here: if somebody goes into an event as we're coming out of this new normal, if I'm going to the Peony Festival, we'll use that as an example, which was a huge hit this weekend, by the way. But if I'm geared up, I'm ready to go. I either have my mask or I don't have my mask. Whatever choice I've made, I'm going to go to the Peony Festival. I get to the Peony Festival, Kristen, and I'm like, oh, this is not good for me. This is not where I don't feel right. I don't feel comfortable. Whatever it may be, other than just peace, I'm out. are there a strategy to kind of work for yourself? And like I said, it could be the peony festival, it could be the grocery store, it could be a neighbor's house, whatever it is. What can we do in that moment to kind of help us process that emotion?
The first thing is acknowledge that you have some anxiety and fear around it, and don't make it wrong or bad, because when we shame ourselves, now I'm more anxious. Now I'm in a shame story that everybody else seems to be okay and I'm the only one. Take a deep breath. First and foremost, you've got to breathe and recognize that feeling in your body. So, and there's nothing wrong with you. That's the other thing. It's okay. Second thing is you might go up and smell the flowers. So now I'm going to engage my sensory system. I'm going to engage something that I know grounds me and calms me. I might go for a walk. I might go for a walk where there might not be as many people, where I feel a little safer, take some deep breaths, might smell the flowers, might look at the birds, might engage in a conversation with somebody that I feel safe with. So I might, if I'm with somebody, I might tell that person, I'm really feeling uneasy here. I'm really trying to self-soothe. I'm taking a deep breath here. I may need to go for a walk. I may need to go for a walk and come back. And then really noticing 5 things. This is my little secret tip. So if you really feel scared about something and you feel like you're going to have a panic attack or you feel really triggered, you're going to notice 5 things in your surrounding environment. So for example, I might notice the peony flower. Oh, it's pink. It's soft. It's got greenery around it. It's rooted in the ground. I'm going to describe the shape, color, size, and texture. That takes you out of fight, flight, or freeze into the present moment and moves you into that prefrontal cortex in your brain, out of the brainstem, which is our amygdala, which is that survival state. And you're going to continuously do that until you notice that I'm more grounded now. I'm feeling safer. I'm more centered. You can do this anytime, anywhere, any place you are. Describe those objects until your brain goes, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. We're working with the brain to shift out of that fight, flight, or freeze response into the more higher centers of the brain to then be able to cope with that feeling inside your body. And it's one of the most powerful things you can do. That's why breathing regularly, when you're in the moment of panic or fear, you know what to do. We've conditioned ourselves, our bodies, and our brains to go, oh, I need to be breathing right now. Rather than the reaction is, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And if you do, you do. And try to practice these strategies when you're not feeling that way. That is one of the key pieces I tell clients all the time. Practice these when you're not feeling panicked so you'll know what to do when you are.
That's awesome. Like I said, I just wanted to give some folks some quick tips that they can employ there. So as we wrap up here, obviously we have a decent contingent from Brazil that's saying hi, good morning, and good afternoon, actually, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us. Kristen, real quick, we have about 1 minute left. If somebody's in a crisis mode right now, besides those 5 things that you just described there, but who can they call for help?
So if you feel suicidal or having any suicidal thoughts, please do not try to do this alone. You want to call 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-TALK. They are trained to listen and help you through it. They are phenomenal. They get it. They've been in dark places too. Or you can text. If you don't want to talk to anyone, you can text 741-741 anytime, any place, anywhere. It's 24/7, both of those hotlines. Don't be afraid to use them. If you're here in Noblesville, Indiana, Prevail is a wonderful resource here for domestic violence, any kind of emotional abuse. 317-776-3472, or you can always go to your local emergency room if you need immediate assistance. 911 can be called.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. As always, join us back here in 2 weeks. We're going to go dive deep into the love languages, which I'm Kristen, I'm sure you know what your love language is. I know what mine is, and you'll need to tune back in here in 2 weeks to learn what it is. So looking forward to it. As always, Kristen Boyce, you're awesome. Thanks so much. Everyone, you are worth it. Hang in there. Focus on mental health, especially in the month of May, but really every day. So we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.